Hey, what's up guys, Disney Nuts here. I am going to show you how I edited this photo. As you guys know, a while back on my Instagram stories I post two photos, and you guys selected this one, which had over 1,200 selections besides the one from Pandora. So we're going to show you how I edited this one. Here's the how it looks processed, and I'm going to show you how it looks without editing, which is this one. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so the first thing is first, as you probably know with the information I put up here on the top, you see what I used, which was basically my Tokina ultra wide lens, which is 12 to 28 f4. And if you don't know already, I have a Canon 80D. This was shot with a tripod at Hollywood Studios, basically just a little bit to the right where Gertie is and where the first benches start to show up. So I got a really good far shot of the Echo Lake as well as the Chinese Theater in the back. Okay. And as for settings, my usual settings, as you probably have seen in my other videos, is f11. But here I actually went to f14 because there was so much explosion, so much light coming up. I wanted to make sure I was able to get a really good capture of the shots without being blown out. Okay, and blown out is what, for example, we have here, which is a little overcooked, like I like to say. And as for seconds, I did 6 seconds. And it's like I mentioned in my previous video before, when you're shooting fireworks, you more or less have a base number, which is usually 10 seconds. It could go up or down, it all depends. That's what makes shooting fireworks so fun. So here I actually let go at 6 seconds, and this is what I got, okay? And obviously ISO 100 to get the best quality out of the camera possible. Okay, so the first thing is first. I'm going to go ahead and start here, and you're going to see everything is straight blank. There's nothing set, okay? This is how the picture came out of the camera, and it's more or less normal when you see stuff like this because obviously it is not processed. When we're shooting in RAW format, which is what I shot this in, you basically get a snapshot of what the camera sees at that moment with no type of processing whatsoever. Good thing is, when you're shooting RAW, is that you can actually bring the colors out. You can bring some stuff that you probably wouldn't be able to do when you do another format, which is usually compressed like JPEG or PNG or some of those other formats. Okay, so that's the first thing that I'm going to recommend, is that you always shoot in RAW, because once you bring the stuff into Lightroom or any other editing stuff that could read your RAW files, you'll be able to bring out colors and textures and stuff like that that you wouldn't be able to do with a JPEG file. Now, the only bad thing with shooting RAW files is you have to edit every single file. Unless it's a pure daylight shot or something like that, you have to edit all your RAW files, at least to convert them to a JPEG so you can post them anywhere on Flickr or Instagram or whatever. Okay, so the first thing is first. I like to start from the top, and you can see here we have different panels here in Lightroom. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually bring up the exposure a little bit. Okay, just not too much. I don't want to really go over the top. Just enough to, see all the stuff that's happening in the background. Okay, and the next thing I like to do, actually, it's all the way on the bottom, which is actually the lens correction. And I always like to turn on this, which is remove chromatic aberrations. And I want to turn on the profile corrections, which is actually where it will read the lens, and you'll see what it did. It actually fixed the corners right there. Let me turn that off. So that's always a really cool thing to do. Lightroom will usually determine the lens that you're having in because it's brought over on the RAW file. Besides the RAW file itself, it brings up all the information in your camera, your settings, and stuff like that. And so it'll be able to pick this out. Okay, so that's the second thing that we do. We fix the lens correction. Okay, let's go back to the top. And we're going to start here with the highlights. Let's bring the highlights down. And what I like of the highlights, bringing them down, is that you can get the detail on the fireworks. This is key when you're shooting fireworks, always to bring the highlights down. Okay, and you can see where we get the details in here start to show up. Now, how much highlights you put or you take, it's up to you. It's, again, you're the editing of your file. You're the artist. So adjust it as you see fit. And again, I just want to go ahead and say that these are the settings that I use, but and I like to tell people, edit with your eyes, not with the settings. So if you see something that you like, and if this has to be switched all the way to the right, and this one has to be all the way to the left, and you like it, it's your photo. You do whatever you want, Okay, so let's bring down the highlights a little bit here, and there we go. So much I get a little, some nice detail here. The second is the shadows, and when I do the highlights down, all the stuff usually goes a little bit dark, so I want to bring that stuff out. So if I bring the shadows up, you'll start seeing that all the stuff starts to show up. But I don't want to bring up too much, because what's going to happen is going to create all this noise here, and it's going to look a little awkward. So I'm just going to bring it up a little bit. Okay, the next one is the white balance. Sorry, not the white balance, but the white under the tone. It's going to touch, just a touch here. I don't want to bring this up too much. This actually adds, which I get asked a lot, is the pop to the picture. It actually pops it out, which is pretty funny because actually it's white. And that's really the key, at least for me, to bring the photos out, to, stand out a little bit. Instead of being a bit bland, I would just touch the white, bring it up. And sometimes I'll adjust the white just enough that you won't really notice it, but it's there. Like for example, you won't notice much difference from here to here, okay? But it's there, okay? And then the black, this one goes ahead and hides some of the stuff that we brought out with our shadows, just a tad, okay? So they're starting to look a little better. Okay, next thing here is the clarity, which I am not going to touch. And the reason for that is that if I bring the clarity up, it's going to make the picture look a little weird, like this. So I'm going to leave that in 0, but we will use it later. Okay, vibrance. If you want to still add some more color to this, which I think it has plenty of color as it is, you can go ahead and bring the vibrance up, or the saturation. Vibrance will bring up the colors that are already in the photo, and saturation will bring up all the colors. That's the difference between that, okay? So if we scroll down here, I'm going to leave actually the tone curve. I'm not going to touch any of this stuff. And then we got the next part, which is HSL, color, and black and white. And this is actually a pretty cool feature here of Lightroom, because this is where you really take the advantage of the raw files, which is where you can control the hue, which is actually the type of, I guess hue is the correct word. So for example, if I bring the hue of the red, you'll see how it goes, brings it over to like a purplish magenta color. Or if I bring it to the right, it gives it like an orangish color, okay? That's the cool thing of that. And the cool thing is you see it doesn't affect any of the other colors, green or red or blue or anything like that. So this 90% of the time I don't touch, because I don't need to modify these colors. They're great as they are. Okay, the next is the saturation. This one I'll touch sometimes, and I'll be honest with you, I use it a lot for green and blue, because believe it or not, supposedly studies say that blue is the best color that everybody likes on Instagram, so sometimes I'll bring the blue up, okay, even if it's just a little tad. Okay, so here I'm going to bring it up, and you see how the blue pops out. Luminance, I won't touch this, but I'll go ahead and show you what it does if I change it. You'll see some weird effects on it, so I usually leave that in 0. Anytime you adjust this stuff, you can always double click on the word and it'll bring it all bound down to 0. So for example, if I do something like this, I'm going to bring it back to 0. I just double click here on luminance and it'll bring it down. Another cool thing of Lightroom is this little ball right here, which actually if you click it, it'll actually give you like a little symbol here, cursor, that if whatever I put it on, it will actually move the color. So for example, if I click here and I click my mouse and I move it up, you'll see it's going to move the green up. See it on the right moving up? So it's a really cool feature, and that's hitting this and then clicking the mouse and leaving it pressed. It'll do that really cool feature. Okay, next split toning. We're not going to address in this one, but there's some really cool stuff that you can do. The next is the sharpening, and this I usually like to bring it up a lot, but again, if I do that, you'll see here you get some noise in the back. So what I like to do is the masking, and the masking, what it does is that it tells the Lightroom what exactly do I want to sharpen. I don't want to sharpen the whole thing, but I want to sharpen certain parts. So I'll usually bring this up around here, and you'll see how it'll start to somewhat different to see there's everything, and here's masking. Okay. The next is noise reduction, which is the contrary of sharpening. So depending on how much sharpening you put, if it comes out a little too sharp, you can actually go back on the sharpening or just give it a touch here in the noise reduction. I like to bring it up a little bit. My rule of thumb, what I like to do is if the sharpening's up in 89, I'll probably do a third, probably do 20, 25, or if it's 50 here, I'll go 15, or just the basic rule of thumb that I like to use. I don't touch any of these other details on here. Okay, we already did the lens correction. Okay, the next thing I like to do is once this is more or less set, I like to touch my white balance. And the white balance is where you actually adjust the whole photo because you want to fine-tune the colors, like I like to say, the palette of colors that you're seeing at the moment. So you want to make the white a little bit more bluish, or you want to make it more yellowish. Like for example, when you're out in the day, you'll see that usually the white usually turns more or less to a bluish color. Because it's really bright, or if it's something indoors, we have something like orange colors, or because of the hue lights or the phosphorescent lights. Okay, so that's another thing here I'll touch a lot. I'll come here at temp, and I'm just gonna move it to the left a little bit. you're going to see how it's going to start. These whites here are going to start looking a little bit more white. And when I put it back, you see how it looks a little more orange, so yellowish. So I'm going to bring it back, and I'm going to move it all the way until I see the boat is white. Another rule of thumb that I usually do when I'm talking about white balance is that I look for trees or stuff that I know the colors of what they are. For example, I know this boat is white, so I'm going to try to always make that the boat is white and that the trees are green here. Trees are green. Another shortcut, you can actually pick here the eyedropper, and what this does is wherever I put the drop, the tip, it'll put it as white. So for example, if I click here, it's going to adjust the photo to white. See, and it's going to put that little dot white and everything else adjust itself. If I go here, let's say if I pick green by mistake, I'm going to adjust that to this being white and adjust the colors accordingly. So let's go ahead and pick the boat here, and let's click white. There we go. Looks looking pretty good, right? Let's adjust the exposure a little more. Okay. The next thing I like to do is the water, is to adjust the water and the sky. And we're going to use a tool over here which is called the adjustment brush. And I will do another video of what all these things are, but I'll go ahead and for this video I'll just go ahead and go directly into the adjustment brush. Just go ahead and click this. And once I click that, I get a new panel with basically all the settings that we had on the other screen. But the cool thing of this is that it will only adjust the settings to where I paint, because I'm going to use my adjustment brush. So whatever I paint on the screen, it's going to be these settings are going to be applied, okay, which is really cool. So that way, if I want to change certain colors and stuff like that, but not the whole picture, I can come to adjustment brush and do it. So with the water, what I like to do, actually let's put this on neutral because I don't want to touch anything on the temp. Let's put this all to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, good. I like to adjust the clarity, and with the clarity, you'll see that it brings out this weird, cool, like see-through effect to the water. And I'm going to go ahead. Oh, okay. Before I paint this, there's one important thing. If you scroll down a little bit here, you have your brush size setting. You can see I got two circles. The first circle is the size of the brush, okay, and the second is the feather. And what the feather means is that it'll go getting softer as it goes outside. So if I want to, let's say that you're painting something and the edges of the brush is usually not as dark as the stuff in the middle, so that's what these feathers will do. So the middle part will be pretty dark, and the outside will go like slowly fading away. Flow is how hard we want to do our settings. So if we want to do just like a really light brush, I bring it down to 10 or stuff like that. If I want to do a really harsh brush where I press it down completely, then this is where the flow goes up. Okay. Okay, another thing is here is the auto mask, and the cool thing of auto mask is that it will automatically determine when I'm painting if there's stuff that it determines that is not part of what we're painting. Like if it sees the water, which is one specific color, and it sees a yellow, it'll paint around it. So that's another really cool thing that it does. Density, I always leave it 100. For this stuff, since I'm affecting all the water, I'm going to leave my mask off, and I'm going to bring the size a little bit, and I'm just going to put probably like a 40 here. Again, the brush flow, which is how hard we're pressing it, is separate from the settings that we have up here. So once we paint this with our settings, we can actually go and adjust post painting, as I like to call it. We can go ahead and change this. Okay, so I selected the clarity only. I'm going to do 38, and I put size 30 points, and I'm going to do a flow like 40%. I'm going to go ahead and paint over this. Okay. You don't see much here, but I'm going to bring up the clarity in a second so you guys can see exactly what it does. Okay. The idea is to somewhat give it that really cool glossy effect on the water. Okay. So let's bring it up a little bit. There you go. You can see how it's starting to look more glossy, the water. And it's okay if you want to adjust not only the clarity at that moment. I can actually adjust the exposure as well. For example, I can bring this up and it looks terrible, but just a tad, just something like this brings the water really to pop, you know. How cool is that? Okay, so there we got the water. Now it shows all the reflections. I added some clarity, and it gives you that really cool like effect on it. Okay, that's the bottom part. Next part, we're actually going to work on the sky, and what we're going to do, we're going to hide all the stuff that's really not helping us, because with all photos we eventually want to focus the eye on the stuff that has color and and the goodies. So all this black sky that is somewhat bluish, and you know, let's get rid of it. Okay, and we're going to use the adjustment brush again. Bet we don't already have the adjustment brush on this part. And as you see, by the way, it actually puts a dot here, so I can come back here and click it and go ahead and do any changes if I want to again. So I'll hit new, and that's going to give me the same menu up again. It's going to do a snapshot of what I had before, so I can do a new one. And I'm going to hit exposure. I'm going to bring it down this time because I want to paint over this, but I want to hide it. So I'm going to go ahead and paint, and you're going to see how this is starting to get darker. Okay. Now I want to make the brush smaller because I need to work in between the fireworks here. So I'm going to bring this smaller here. Let's put this in here. So we paint that a little bit in this corner here. Let's go over to this corner here. See how it's going darker. Okay. And let's bring this up here as well. And then let's go ahead and make the brush size a little smaller as well. We're working our way inside here until we get to the bottom. There we go. There we go. Cool. Now it's not uncommon that I'll do like different layers of this. Like for example, I'll start on the top with a really hard flow, and then as I work inside I'll bring the flow down, so it's like a really light painting. So if I paint over something by accident, it doesn't really affect it. Okay, there we go. And then right here between fireworks, get that really cool pop out of it, really define the lines. Okay, there we go. Okay, and then one more thing that I like to do is, let's go ahead and do another brush, which is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to click another one. Again, if I ever want to go back to the brushes settings, you'll see the little dots here. Like if I click here, you'll see my settings pop up again, and I can go ahead and adjust. And I can go up here and click this one and adjust as well. Now Lightroom also has here a really cool feature, which is to show selected mask overlay. So it will show what I selected. So I can basically say, okay, this is where I painted, and I missed this spot or something like that. So I missed this, I can actually go in here and paint this. So this is a really cool feature it has. Also, if you need the delete by any chance, you'll see you got A and B, and you got the erase. And you click the erase, and it does exactly the same thing, but backwards. Wherever I move my brush and hit the button, it'll obviously erase. You can see the minus button there. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to bring the middle stuff out. This stuff, it looks like this looks a little dark in the back, you know. And this here, even though the color looks great, the detail looks great, looks a little dark. So I'm going to hit another brush, and then I'm going to do, you got it, exposure. I'm going to bring it up a tad. Okay, now I'm going to make my brush a little bigger, not that big, just enough to cover the middle part. If you ever want to use like keyboard shortcuts, there's actually the bracket, the left bracket and the right bracket will do the same thing, so you don't actually have to use your mouse if you don't want to. Okay, so I'm going to just scroll over this a little bit with that exposure setting I put in here, and you'll see how this is starting to come out. Okay, and again, I'm using a really soft, not soft, but more or less like a soft to medium brush here, so that way I don't overdo it. Okay, so let's put a little harder so you can see what we're doing. You'll see how it starts coming out. Okay, so now you can see the building a little better. The bottom of the island where the tree is comes out. Okay. And again, just like the other settings, you can come here if you want to adjust the size, the exposure, you want to adjust color and stuff like that. You can do that. Like if I want to, you know, adjust this stuff, I can if I want to. See there, it's like really yellow if I want to go blue, if I want to go a little cooler in the inside. So the powers of the brushes are unlimited, as like I like to say it, because you can basically edit stuff inside the photo to have different settings like clarity and dehaze. So wrapping up, if we go back here to the main, the basic, this applies to the whole photo, and if I click on my adjustment brush, these brushes will each have their own individual settings. Okay, and there you go, guys. There's the photo that you guys wanted me to show you how to edit it. Pretty straightforward. Just wrapping up what we're doing here, I brought up the bottom. I used a clarity brush to pop the water to make it look like that nice glossy feel, and in the sky I hid or brought down the exposure of the areas that were not needed, so it doesn't look so all fuzzy and stuff like that. Another thing I will do a lot, which I always tell people, is I'll do a brush on top of the fireworks themselves and put a lot of saturation on it. Sometimes it works cool, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So let's go ahead and do that and see how you guys like it. So I'm going to hit new, and I'm going to select saturation. I'm going to go to 66%, and I'm going to paint over the fireworks here, and you can see that the color so like just pops. If there's different colors, it looks great. If it's only one color, it doesn't look anything out of the ordinary like we're doing now. Okay, so there we go. And I just put a couple of saturations brushes over this, and there we go. Okay guys, so this is the photo you guys asked me to edit. Hope you guys liked it. Hope it's it helps you guys out with editing your photos. Again, edit with your eyes, not with the settings. It's good to know what the settings do and learn all the basics of what's behind them and how can they change your photo in a good or positive way. But like I tell people also, nobody's seen the original photo, so for whatever you edit and whatever you put out there, it's your photo, and if you like it, that's what's important. Okay? And there you go. There's a photo taken at Hollywood Studios. This is Jingle Bell Bam. I took it from across Echo Lake, right to basically to the right of Gertie, and just before the bench that has the umbrella. Okay, and I parked there with my Tokina lens, and just again for you to know, I have a Canon 80D. That's it. Thanks for watching. Expect to see more videos like this popping up little by little on the channel, since I know you guys have been asking for them. And again, stay safe. And this was recorded on November the 18th, so have a happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays as well. Okay, take care guys.